About 6 months ago, I did an episode called Seven Deities for Shadow Work. We explored various deities that are great and very well aligned with the shadow work journey, like Kali and Nana and the Morgan. And after that episode, I got so many requests to do another episode and share more deities that are aligned with the shadow work journey. So today I'm going to be sharing with you seven more deities. Some of these deities may be ones that you know and love, others may be ones that you've never heard of. So we are going to dive right in. Merry meet. I'm Aislin. This is Ask Aislin, and this is seven more deities for the shadow work journey. So welcome to those who are joining us. And if you are here with us live, you can leave questions and comments in the chat. I will be watching that as we go. I'll answer questions during the Q&A at the end. And if you hear something you like today, make sure to leave a heart or a thumbs up. That makes sure that this gets out to the feed of more people. Okay, so we are just going to dive right in, and there's a lot to talk about tonight. So I'm going to start with the Cailleach. Okay, so this is a deity that many people love. I know, I shouldn't say many. She's a deity that not a lot of people know about, but she has a very cult following. There's a lot of people who love her. She, from my personal experience, is a great goddess for the shadow work journey. Now, she is a Celtic goddess who is often misunderstood. Like a lot of these deities that are on our list today are deities that are often misunderstood. And, um, and a lot of that has to do with their connection to the underworld and kind of to the darker side of things. But that is exactly what makes them so good for the shadow work journey. And just pausing to say hi. I see Kurt's in the chat. Hi. For those who can hear, my voice is still pretty bad. I've had laryngitis I'm on day 10 now, but this is the best I can do today. So the Cailleach her name translates to veiled one. And over time, her name came to be known as the Old Wife or Old Woman. Sometimes people will also call her Old Hag, though some people take offense to the term because it has negative connotations. Generally, the Cailleach appears in her crone form, though it is not unusual for people to experience her in other forms. So, in fact, in our Shadow Seekers membership a few months ago, going back to, I think it was February, we did a ritual with her, and there were people who said that during the meditation, she appeared to them as a young woman. So, it is possible that she can appear in any form. Now, for most of the time, she'll appear as the crone, which is the third aspect of the triple goddess. She is an ageless goddess, though, and she's a powerful goddess of death, rebirth, and transformation, which we're going to find that most of the goddesses, and there's one god on our list tonight, but most of these deities are very much connected to that death and rebirth cycle. And saying hi to a few more joining us. I see Elizabeth is here and Colleen. Merry meet everybody. So the Cailleach is so great for our shadow work. One of the connections that she has is she is a goddess of winter. And winter is a time that is aligned with shadow work. Now, there are several times in the various different natural cycles that are particularly aligned to shadow work. You can do shadow work at any time. But particularly, there's this alignment during the winter, during the waning half of the year. So that would actually be from summer solstice to winter solstice. And right now, we're in the waxing half, so we will be entering the waning half of the year in just 1 month. So it won't feel quite like that, in the beginning. We do start to, after summer solstice, we see that our days begin to wane, which puts us into that waning half. Now, also the waning half of the lunar cycle, which is basically full moon to new moon, that's also a great time for our shadow work. And these are the time periods that the Cailleach is also aligned to. Now, the Cailleach has many epithets, which are different names that people use to call her in. One name is Great Mother, and another one is called She of 1,000 Names. Another epithet is Goddess of Sea and Stone, and this speaks very much to her connection to the ocean and to the sea, which we will talk about in a moment. She can be called upon for wisdom and guidance in anything that you're doing, but particularly helpful when you are trying to hear and connect to your higher self. She is very facilitative in that communication. So even if that voice seems very diminished, even if you have no idea what the higher self is, and for those who don't have any idea what the higher self is the part of you that is not limited by anything here in the earthly plane. Some might say this is your soul, or at least the part of you that connects to your soul. This is the part of you that connects to your guides and to the gods and the goddesses and the nature spirits. And sometimes that voice seems kind of diminished, and sometimes it's hard to tell what's our life purpose, what's our life path. When we're really aligned to the higher self, that's not hard for us to know. But it's pretty easy to get kind of derailed, right, in all the things that happen in life. And so working with the Cailleach is a very good way to help bring yourself back to your higher self. Um, Now, like any deity, you can work with her through intention setting. So, a lot of times people will say, I'm feeling kind of tapped on the shoulder by this god or this goddess, and I just don't know what to do. And so, the simplest thing that a person can do is set the intention that they want to connect. So I will drop below this. I have a episode that's called Working with Deity, and it will give you tips and strategies on different ways to work with a deity if there's one that you want to work with. But in general, building an altar or setting aside some space where you can leave some offerings, even if it's on the top of your bookcase. I have many altars just built on the top of bookcases. But that can be a good way to connect, right? It's just setting the space, which is like anybody. Like if you wanted to talk to a friend or get in touch with someone that you know physically in this world, what would you do? You'd call them on the phone, right? You'd send them an email. You would let them know, I want a dialogue. And the same thing goes with deities. And we can do that by putting up altars or sacred spaces set up especially for them or giving offerings. Now, I mentioned earlier that the Cailleach is connected to the sea, and so therefore she's going to be particularly present at the ocean, at any bodies of water. You don't have to travel to the ocean or a body of water though to connect with her. You could simply connect with her even in the shower, right? Because of her connection to water. You can leave offerings for her, like baked goods, sweets in particular, hawthorn or blackberries, like any berries you can think of that would be available in the winter. Those would be really good offerings. And hagstones is a really great offering if you're lucky enough to find one. So I have one. I wish my hagstone had a bigger hole. For those who don't know what a hagstone is, it's a stone, oftentimes found on a beach. It doesn't always have to be, but oftentimes found on a beach. And it has a hole that is not drilled into it. It's a hole that was naturally produced in some way. So you can see here, this one has a very, very small one right here. But the point of the hagstone is that we can look through it. And so one way to connect with the Cailleach is to get a hagstone and then begin to gaze through this, quiet your mind, and kind of set your intentions. So other symbols besides the hagstone, other symbols of the Cailleach are the cauldron. You'll notice that that's a symbol of many of the deities on the list today. She is particularly connected to the owl, as well as to the staff and the hammer. So those would be symbols you could put on an altar or you could have around you, and then that would help you connect as well. All right, so that is the Cailleach, and I'm going to move on to the next deity. But again, anybody who's here with me live, if you've worked with any of these deities, put that in the chat. If you have any questions or comments, I'm watching the chat as we go. Okay, so next up, we're going to move on to Cerridwen. Now, Cerridwen is a Welsh goddess. I'm going to take a little of this tea because the voice is starting to fade a bit. So Cerridwen is a Welsh goddess. Now, she is also known as a triple goddess, which we also see in a deity like the Morrigan. The Morrigan will not be featured today because she was in the previous episode, which I will also drop below this for anyone who wants to check out those other deities. Um, so Cerridwen is particularly attached to the phases of the moon, and she is a goddess of prophecy. So some say that she can help you actually connect to your skills of divination by gazing into her cauldron. Her cauldron is very transformative. She is a shapeshifter, as we're going to see in a story in just a bit here, and a goddess of life, death, and rebirth, just like the Cailleach, and transformation. Now, she is a keeper of the cauldron of the underworld, which is the cauldron of transformation. Now, this is the cauldron that we can go to during life in order to transform an aspect of us while we're living. It's also a cauldron that we go to when we die because it transforms us into the next part of our being, right? Now, in many myths, Cerridwen was said to have two children. She had a daughter and she had a son. And the daughter they were pretty much opposites. The daughter was fair and beautiful and she was kind, and the son was ugly and mean. And it's not really delineated why he was so mean. It could be that people were making fun of him, right? As we know, people get mean if they're bullied, very oftentimes or sometimes. Now, Cerridwen decided that she wanted to help out her son, and so she brewed this potion. But the deal with this potion was that it was going to take a year and a day to be ready for this transformation she wanted to give to him. Basically, she wanted to transform him into having more of the qualities of her daughter. And so she could not sit there for a year and a day and just stir this cauldron. And that was another part of making the potion, is that it had to be stirred constantly. And so she enlisted the help of a boy named Guyon. And everything was going well. He would come in and he would stir the cauldron when she needed to go out and gather herbs or different things. And at one point, the stories differ on how this happened. Some say he intentionally tasted the potion, kind of like Eve was told not to eat the apple, and then eventually she did. So some say that's how the story went. Others say that a drop of the potion fell on his hand at some point while he was stirring, and he licked it. And in that moment, it is very similar to the story of the apple of knowledge. He knew everything. He knew all the things in the past, and he knew all the things in the future. And because he could see the future, he could see how mad Cerridwen was going to get, and he knew that she was going to seek his death. And so when she returned, she kind of returns in that moment as he's realizing this, and he takes off running, and she chases him. And there's this whole series of different transformations that the two of them make, and so different pairs of predator and prey. And at one point, he's a hare and Cerridwen is a greyhound. And at another point, he's a fish and she's an otter. In another point, he's like a small bird and she's a hawk. And then finally, he is a grain of wheat and she is a hen and she eats him up. Now, he stays inside of her for 9 months and she gives birth to him. And out comes the poet Taliesin. So anybody who knows the stories of the Arthurian legends will recognize Taliesin. Some say he goes on to become the Merlin. But what the really important part of the story is, this is the power of Cerridwen's transformation. What we put into the cauldron, she can transform for us. So she is particularly aligned, like if there's something that you want to release, she's very good for that as well. So we have this ritual in our Shadow Seekers membership that we did in January, but people return to constantly. I do it pretty much every single month on the dark moon. And it is a releasing ritual where you take all the things that are kind of feel like they're blockages, limiting beliefs, different negative energy and emotions you're having. You write everything down on a piece of paper. And then what you can do is you can either burn it, like you could burn it in a cauldron. That's what I usually do in her cauldron of transformation. Or you could fill a bowl or a cauldron with water, and you could write all of your the things you're letting go of in pencil. I would suggest, because it's easier to erase that, and then you tear that up and put that in this bowl of water. And so either way, we have this kind of releasing, this symbolic releasing that we're doing. But you can work with her on releasing anything. It doesn't have to be in that specific ritual. Now, like Cailleach, like any of the deities that are on this list, the best way to really connect is to set out that intention. So if you decide you want to work with Cerridwen, maybe there's something you want to transform, or you have something big that you want to release and you want to work with her, set out that intention to connect. Maybe set up a little space for her, and you can leave some offerings. So offerings for Cerridwen are grain, any kind of grains, especially wheat, barley, acorns, sunflower seeds, and pork. Because I forgot to mention, one of her symbols is the white sow. She is known as the white sow. Sometimes in imagery, you'll even see her in she'll be in a robe or a veil, and she has the face of a white sow. Now that connects her to the moon and to fertility. Sows are known to be very fertile animals. But other symbols of Cerridwen, of course, would be her cauldron, the moon, like I mentioned, sows, grain, and hawks. All right, so we are going to move on to the third deity for tonight, and this is Lilith. Okay, so I know a lot of people love Lilith. We got a lot of requests to work with Lilith in our Shadow Seekers membership, and we did that a few months ago. I believe it was in April, I think. So Lilith is a primordial goddess, just like many of the deities on the list. Very, very misunderstood. Now, while some people will tell you that she's first found in the Talmud or in the Old Testament of the Bible, the reality is that her stories trace back much, much further, which is why we call her a primordial goddess. She goes back at least as far as Mesopotamia, and some people say her stories may go back even further than that. But what most people know her for is being biblical Adam's first wife. And that's the story that we're going to talk about today because it's very conducive and very connects very much to our own shadow work journey. Now, stories say that she was the first wife of Adam. And unlike Eve, who was made of Adam's rib, because of course she had to be made of something of him, Lilith was made of the dust of the ground, just like Adam was. So what that does is that puts her on an equal playing field, man and woman, completely equal. Now, Lilith, because she knew she was equal to him, refused to lie underneath him while they were having sex, and this caused a controversy and chaos in the kingdom. And so eventually she fled Eden on wind and ended up, different stories say different places, but she kind of ends up on this bank of a body of water. And Adam gets pissed, and so he tells God, I want her back. And so God gets these three angels that I kind of think of they're like they're pretty much there to shake her up, right? So think in modern days, like somebody owes somebody money, and they hire some guys to go rough them up. That's sort of what this is. And so these angels show up and they tell her that they are going to murder her children. They're going to drown her. They're going to do all these awful things. And they bully her and they harass her and for her rebellion. And really her only rebellion is, we've been listening to this story, right? Her only rebellion is that she wanted to be respected and valued for who she was, not for what other people thought she should be. And so she is such a great goddess to work with when there are things about you that you want to let go of, that maybe there are these expectations that other people have placed on you, or maybe even you placed on yourself, but certainly society places all kinds of expectations on us based on, where we were born, who we are. Our parents will place expectations on us. The school places expectations on us. The church, friend groups, like all these different places. And so she is a great goddess to work with when you want to work through some of that, because those expectations are not you and likely are causing you some stress. So we want to release some of that. So if you want to work with Lilith, you can, again, leave her offerings. It's the best way, is kind of set out that intention, leave some offerings. Fruit is a very good offering for Lilith: plums, apples, grapes, berries. wine, rum, any liquor of any kind. And other symbols that are really connected to her are the snake. That would be the one I would say mainly. Um, there's a lot of snake and serpent energy within her. And, the serpent itself is a feared animal. The snake is a feared animal by many people. We often fear what we don't understand. There's something about the snake that is just difficult for people to understand. But I venture to say, I think a lot of the fear that people have, well, some of it goes back to like there's an evolutionary reason to fear snakes because to our ancestors who didn't know which ones were poisonous or weren't, being bitten by a snake could kill you, right? That could be the end. And so there is this reason people will have these fears of snakes. But I venture to say that some of this also is that thread of the snake being connected to the Garden of Eden. And even if we're not Christian, like most of us aren't who follow me, even if we're not Christian, we still live in a society that is very much connected to the Christian ideology, right? And so that just kind of permeates us. Our fears tend to be the fears of the society as well. Okay, so though that is Lilith, but great goddess to work with, especially if you want to let go of some stuff, right? She's also a good goddess. Like if you have some rage inside of you, and if you're rageful about the way that the world is, the way that genders are stereotyped, the boxes that they put us in, and the way we're constricted, she's also a very good goddess because she can help you get some of that rage out. Okay, a constructive way. All right. So welcome. And I see that Colleen, she said, I love Lilith. Yeah, she's a very, very beloved goddess. I got so many requests of people who wanted to work with her, which is why we worked with her in Shadow Seekers. Okay, next up, we have Saturn. So he's one that many people are like, what? Why is he on the list? But he's awesome for shadow work. So Saturn is a Roman god, and we're actually going to talk more about his Greek counterpart Cronus as we tell the story. But both Saturn and Cronus are gods of time, of disillusion, so like dissolving things, breaking things, but also gods of abundance and of wealth, and gods of periodic renewal and liberation. And that is the beauty of working with Saturn, because here's the deal: life isn't all just beauty and light and goodness. It's also the darkness and the times when we feel constricted. And it's through moving through these cycles that we evolve. In astrology, there is this kind of idea that you actually don't want too many trines in your chart. Trines are, for those who don't know, a trine in your chart is an aspect that's very positive. So you would think that that's like we would want a ton of those, right? But what trines do is they give you a lot of ease in that area of your life. And if you have too much ease in your life, you're never going to grow, right? So if you are on a growth path, which the majority of people who are following me, who come to Body, Mind, Witchcraft and Shadow Seekers are, you have likely experienced a lot of traumas in your life and a lot of ups and downs because likely when you were creating your soul contract before you incarnated here in this version of you in this incarnation, you chose to go through some of those difficult things because you wanted to evolve. All right, so working with a deity like Saturn, we want to embrace the difficult times, even though they don't feel good. They're the lessons. They're how we're going to evolve. We're not going to evolve if everything is easy for us. Okay, so now Saturn is known as the taskmaster. He's like the school teacher with a ruler who hits your hands when you're not doing things right, and so people get a little afraid of him. He's also the balancer of karma, and people are a bit afraid of karma. And just an aside too, I believe in my experience and from much of what I've read and mentors and guides that I've had, karma isn't really what many of us think of it as. Many of us think that karma is kind of tit for tat. We did something bad and then something bad happens to us. And I don't really believe that's how karma is at all. I think that what we perceive as bad karma or kind of the negative patterns and things that happen to us are actually here because they're lessons that we have not fully encapsulated yet. And sometimes these lessons extend through multiple lifetimes, and they're meant to. So karma isn't something necessarily to be afraid of. It's more something to understand. It's not something to get down on yourself about because you were bad. It's something to try to figure out why is that happening, right? So Saturn also exists as a planetary energy. And as a planet in the astrological chart, it's a very restrictive energy. It's an energy, unlike Jupiter, which is very expansive. Saturn is very restrictive. It pushes us inward. It kind of makes us feel like we're in a box and we're kind of pressing on the sides of it, and we can't really get out. But again, those are the moments that transform us. So we, while they don't feel good when we're in them, we should be blessed when we receive them because we know they're going to make us stronger. They're going to make us better. They're actually going to help us resolve some of that karma that we're carrying from the past lives, just simply the lessons that we're working on that we haven't finished. Now, I'm going to tell the story quickly of Kronos and Zeus for those who've never heard it. And there is a version of this with Saturn, though the Cronus and Zeus version is the most well known. Now, Kronos is the god of time, and he had many children. And he was told, there was this prophecy that came down that said that one of your children is going to kill you. And so what he did is that every time one of his children were born, he would eat them to offset this fear that somebody was going to come along someday and kill him. And so at the very end of everything, his son Zeus is going to be born, and his wife, she decides that she is going to not allow this to happen. So she takes a stone and she wraps it in cloth, and she kind of presents that to him as the new baby, and he doesn't really look at it very closely, and he eats it down. And so meanwhile, little Zeus is kind of taken off, and in many stories they say he was raised by Artemis and Apollo. Or some stories say, actually no, I take that back, that's Chiron. But he was raised off, not by his own family, was able to grow up into an adult man, and then came back and killed his father. So, the story itself, it's a very violent story. And I should say there's also a cool part in it too, is that when Zeus comes back, he forces Cronus to basically purge up all the children that he'd eaten. So all the Olympian gods and goddesses are purged out. And that big stone that he consumed that was supposed to be Zeus, that goes flying onto, and I can't remember the name of the mountain, but it's where the Oracle of Delphi is. And it's the Omphalos, is this big stone that was at the Oracle of Delphi. And people say that that was basically the stone that Kronos had eaten. So it's a very violent story, as we can see, but it has many layers of meaning to it. Saturn's lessons for us, in our own shadow work can feel very much like being devoured and spit back up again. And, I think working with him as an ally, not resisting the hard times, not resisting the lessons, but really calling upon him and working with him can be helpful. Now, there's another form that Saturn takes, and he is associated with the hermit. And so especially if there's times when you feel like you're pulling inward because it's time to do some internal work, that's a good time to call upon him, to work with him. And also during times of Saturn retrograde, which is why I wanted to include him in tonight's episode, because Saturn retrograde is coming up again. It's coming up starting on June 29th through November 15th. And this is a retrograde that a lot of people don't like. It's an uncomfortable retrograde a lot of the times. But if we're aware of what's happening and we're prepared, it usually goes much more smoothly because we know that things may kind of boil up and be there for us to face and to work through. And so we can do different things that will prepare us for it. And so that is what we're going to do in our Shadow Seekers membership in July. We're actually going to do a whole workshop on how to work with the energy of Saturn and Chiron retrograde, which is also coming. And that will help facilitate the journey of our shadow work through those retrograde times. Because if we work with them correctly and we're kind of prepared for it, it can be a time of huge transformation. You can get a lot of shadow work done. But if we're not really prepared for them, what will often happen is people are very like disheveled during it, like very it can feel like very chaotic energy, like the rug is being pulled out from underneath your feet. And so it's really good to have some preparation for that. Okay, so if you are interested in learning more about that, then I definitely recommend joining our Shadow Seekers membership, which I'm going to talk about at the end of this episode. But going back to Saturn, some offerings to Saturn: black coffee, a lot of dark things like dark rum, dark chocolate, tobacco, grains, bread, dark fruits, and fermented foods. Okay, so next deity we are going to look at is Lilith. Sorry, I already did Lilith. Mnemosyne. And by the way, I will put below this video, there's going to be all the spellings of these, because some of these are hard to spell, and you may want to go back and look up some of these later. Okay, so let's talk about Mnemosyne. She is a Titan goddess of the Greeks. So she is the daughter of Uranus and Gaia. And according to Hesiod, she is the mother of the muses. So she has a great connection to music and to the arts and poetry and painting and different things like that. So it's believed that Mnemosyne could help people remember the stories of the gods and the heroes that came in the time before writing. So this is like the ancient Greeks would call upon her to help them remember these stories so they wouldn't be lost before people wrote them down. So that word mnemonic device actually comes from Mnemosyne. And so for those who don't know what a mnemonic device is, a mnemonic device is like a method to help us remember something. So I think of like when I was learning music when I was a little kid, and I was probably like, I started piano when I was 8, and I did a lot of theory. My teacher taught a lot of theory. And so those of you who've studied music will probably remember "Every good boy deserves fudge." That's the one that I learned. But there's different variations of this. And it's basically just a saying that helps us remember the lines of the music staff, what letters are on each of those, what notes are on each of them. And so that's where the word mnemonic device comes from. Now, in the Greek underworld, if anybody's ever read the Odyssey, there's a whole section in the middle where they go to the underworld, and it's kind of this like dark area. It's not hell necessarily, but it's kind of this dark area that where everybody's kind of a shade of what they were while they were alive. And in the Greek underworld, there's this idea that those who died would drink from the river Lethe. And when you drank from the river Lethe, you would forget the previous life, and people would come there and they would drink of it. Now, there's actually a goddess named Lethe. It's spelled Lethe, and she is the opposite of Mnemosyne. She is the goddess of forgetting and oblivion. So, like basically obliviating the mind, right? Like clearing it. And so these two goddesses stand in opposition to each other because they're in addition to this river Lethe, there was also a pool of Mnemosyne that was called Mnemosyne. And if you drank from that pool, you would retain your memories of your past lives. And so Mnemosyne is such a great goddess to work on when we're trying to remember things, especially. And in some stories, even, it says that the dead were given choices, like they were given this choice, and they could either drink from Lethe and they would forget the past life, but they would also forget. So they would forget all their pain, like all the bad things that happened, but they would also forget all the lessons that they learned. Or they could drink from the pool of Mnemosyne and they would retain all of that. They would remember all of their pain and they could experience it again, but they would also remember all the lessons that they learned. And I don't know about you, but I would rather not have my mind obliviated every time I come into a life, right? I would like to remember things because I want to progress in my journey. And so sometimes people remember very easily. They remember their past lives. They'll have dreams and visions. And other people, I would say the majority of people, struggle to remember this. And so we can call upon Mnemosyne to help us in that way. So she's very great at helping you remember past lives. And she's also really great at helping you remember dreams. So if you have like different dreams and visions that they're kind of there and they're fleeting and then they're gone and you want to remember them, you can also call upon her. Now, offerings to Mnemosyne, you can offer kind of there's not as much information about her, like what to offer her, as there is some of these other deities. You can offer her kind of the classic things like water or wine or fruit or flowers. But other offerings would be books and poetry because she is connected to the word and to art and to inspiration and writing. All right, we got two more for you, and then we are going to go to the Q&A. All right, so let's go to Quan Yin next. Okay, Quan Yin is one that many people would probably not expect to be on this list. So a lot of these deities they have this dark side to them, and those who've worked with Quan Yin will probably tell you that there isn't a lot of darkness in her. But she is a great goddess to work with, especially for the aspect of self-love. Part of our shadow work is coming to the true experiential feeling of truly being in love with ourselves. And, so you ask yourself, am I truly in love with myself? And do I love myself, unconditionally? And many people will say on the surface, yes, but as they start to dive in, they're going to notice that no, they aren't. Because if we truly loved ourselves, we wouldn't say the self-deprecating things to ourselves that we do, right? You say things to yourself that you would never say to other people. And so we're all like that. I've rarely ever met anybody who, doesn't struggle with this in some way. Okay, so let's talk about Quan Yin because she is such a compassionate goddess and she can help, especially in this category, in this area of self-love. The Quan Yin is a goddess of mercy and compassion, and she is very much connected to the heart chakra. Now, in one of her many stories about her, it was said that she was a Buddhist who had such a loving nature, and she did all of these good things that eventually she achieved nirvana. So that's the end of all the cycles of death and rebirth. Once someone achieves nirvana, they are given the option to leave that cycle of death and rebirth and go to heaven, essentially nirvana. Now, just as she was about to transcend, as she was about to kind of break free of this cycle, it said that she heard somebody crying in anguish below her on the earth. And this pain of this person pained her so badly that she decided that she would stay on earth to help the suffering of those who were still here. So many people compare her to like the Virgin Mary because of her role in intercession. So she is very good at answering the call of those who call upon her. And so she's a really easy goddess to work with. So if you're somebody who finds that, you know, you have some difficulty connecting to the gods and the goddesses, I would try Quan Yin because she is so easy to work with. She's so compassionate. You just call upon her and she's there. So like I said, great for, that idea of self-love, balancing your heart chakra. If you know you've got some issues with your heart chakra, she's a great goddess to work with. Offerings to Quan Yin, like all the deities, the best way to work with them is just kind of set that intention. Like anybody you wanted to talk to in your physical life, I'd like to talk to you. And then leave her some offerings, and that begins the dialogue. So good offerings for Quan Yin, flowers of any kind, but especially lotus flowers, water. She has a deep connection to water. And then also incense, and particularly sandalwood, she especially loves. Okay, and then finally, we are going to end our 7 for tonight with Hecate, who is loved by many, many, many people, and I didn't include her last time, so we're going to include her now. Okay, so Hecate is a goddess of many things. She is a goddess of the crossroads. She's the keeper of the keys. She is a triple goddess. Most often, she will come in the crone form. Many people will recognize her in her crone form as the triple goddess, but she can appear in any form, and we've done several rituals in both Shadow Seekers and Covenant Midnight's Flame with Hecate, and we get a lot of feedback from people who say she appears as a young woman as well. So she can appear in any kind of form. Now, as a goddess of the crossroads is a place where we can come to make a choice. So she's very good at helping us make decisions. So if there's something in your shadow work that you, or just even in your regular life, and you're just trying to make a decision, she's a great goddess to call upon for that. She is also, like I mentioned, the keeper of the keys, which means that she holds the keys. Well, in fact, what I should say is she helps you see that you hold the keys to open all different kinds of doorways. So different doorways that seem like they're blocked to you. So like if you're having trouble connecting to your guides, you can work with Hecate to help show you the key to open that doorway. If you're having trouble, connecting to a past life, so she could also help you there. She can help you open any doors that you feel that you're struggling to open. Um, Now, offerings to Hecate. Oh, and I should mention before I go into offerings, is she's a goddess who, like, a lot of people work with her in the waning half of the year, but I like working with her in Beltane as well. So like she's very much connected. Like a lot of people like working with her at Samhain. Personally, our coven has worked with her for the past 3 Samhains because we just love working with her so much. And she's very good for like I said, like when the veils are kind of thinned, she's very good for helping us connect to our ancestors and those who crossed over. There are also stories that say that she is a participant of the wild hunt. So while you'll hear in stories that it's like Odin is connected to the wild hunt and Holda, Cerridwen is also someone who is said to lead the wild hunt. And for those who don't know what the wild hunt is, it's basically a procession of kind of spirit riders on horses that go through the countryside and connect and collect all of the souls that have died, and they're kind of wandering and help lead them on to the other world. And so she's very much connected to that. And so you can work with her near Samhain, you can work with her at Yule, you can work with her at any time, but I love working with her during those times. And then we also love working with her at Beltane, which is on the flip side of the year from Samhain. And there we often like working with her because of the aspect of her helping open up those different doorways. Now, there's many different offerings you can leave her. And I know there's probably people in the chat who've worked with Hecate, so if you have any offerings that you like to leave, put that in the chat as well. But some offerings you can leave her: song, poetry, handmade items, garlic, saffron, oak leaves, food, especially sweets. It's not an exhaustive list, but those are some good offerings to her. And she's also symbols of Hecate would be dogs. She's very much connected to dogs, and keys, right? And so if you want to connect with her, just like any of these deities, just set out that intention. Set up a space kind of dedicated to her. Like I said, it could just be the top of a bookcase, and put out some offerings, and then work with her that way. Okay, so I am going to move into the Q&A, and I see that I see Anthony is here, and he said he just mentioned Hecate at the cemetery today. That's very cool. And Colleen says she works with her, the goddess of witches. Yeah, so many people also call her the goddess of witches. Colleen says she offers Hecate rose petals. Yeah. So there are so many great offerings that people can offer her. And the other thing I guess I didn't mention at all yet today is that, these lists I'm giving of the different offerings, they are, like I said, not exhaustive. One of the best ways to find out what a goddess or a god would like is to simply ask them. Just put out that question, what would you like to be offered? And then just be open to whatever comes through. Like anything, we just want to try not to second guess what the first thing that kind of pops into your mind is usually going to be the right one because it's unfiltered. What happens later is then you start to second guess yourself about it, that we don't get there. So, all right, so I'm going to go on to the Q&A. So I have a few questions that people have sent to me. And then if anybody's here live and has some questions, it can be about anything. It doesn't have to be about deities or shadow work. It can be about anything related to shadow work, energy work, witchcraft, anything you're wondering about. Okay, so I'm going to dive in with these 3 questions, and that will give anybody live here some time to put in some questions as well. Okay, so the first question comes from Anthony, and he's asking about tips and little ways to stay connected to spirit in everyday life. And he said, I know you've mentioned pulling cards before, but I'd like to know if you have some more tips. I have a lot of different ways that people can connect. And so what I usually tell people is, the best thing to think about is time. A lot of people find that they'll say, I don't have enough time to connect. And really, all you need to do is do something simple. 5 to 10 minutes on most days is enough to see a significant change in your life. And those people who have tried that will tell you the same thing. It's amazing how much just a little bit of time set aside does for this. So some other ways to connect, he mentioned pulling the cards. So a daily draw of a card is a very good way to connect to spirit. You can also do candle gazing. So like 5 minutes of candle gazing is another good way to connect. Walking meditation or a moving meditation of some kind. So I love like moving meditation where you just put on some music that you feel like you can move to. And then you close your eyes and you just let your body move in whatever way it wants to move. And what many people will find when they do this is they've got kind of stuck and stagnant energy in different parts of the body, and that can help dislodge it. Moving meditation is also a really good way to work with your sacral chakra and the element of water. Other things that a person could do if they want to connect is some breath work. So like 5 minutes of breath work. They could do like the breath of fire for 5 minutes, and they could do like a cooling breath, like the sipping breath, where you sip in like you're sipping in through a straw and then exhale through your nose slowly. They could do like a counted breath, like a breath where there's a longer exhale than an inhale, will help bring your system down. So, but just 5 minutes of some breath work could be very good. 5 minutes of Kundalini energy work, 5 to 10 minutes of that would be very good. Anthony is in our Shadow Seekers membership, and we just did a workshop on Kundalini energy work for witches, and I'm about to put a new video in our portal too that's a practice, a daily practice that people can use. So that's another idea. Mantra, chanting, devotional singing to deities is also very good. So it's really at the end of the day, you just need the 5 minutes, right? A grounding tree meditation, go walk barefoot, do a walking meditation where you kind of like walk for 20 paces to one end of like a hallway or the yard or something, and then walk back and really be present and mindful of what's going on with you. But the whole point of this is that it doesn't take much. You just need a couple of little things to do. Now, what I'm going to do is below the video, I'm also going to drop another video I did a while back on 7 simple daily rituals. And I think you might get some other ideas from that. But I also wanted to mention that I have this little mini course coming out. It's called the Short and Sweet Spiritual Self Practice. And it's basically all about this. It's about how to help somebody set up a daily practice for themselves. And that is going to be coming out sometime this summer. For those who are in Shadow Seekers, they'll be able to receive it first. In fact, I think I'm going to gift it to everybody in Shadow Seekers, and then it will be available for the public to purchase at a very small price later on. But it's it will go through all of this, how to set up your practice, how to break through any of your blockages that you might have around it. How to troubleshoot, what to do when you're procrastinating or you find you're falling off of it. And so it's just going to be an all-around really great little mini course. So that should be coming out very soon. All right, so I hope that helped answer the question. Okay, so let us go on to the next question. So this one comes from Terry. So Terry said, I have a disability that is accompanied with a lot of pain. Can energy work help relieve this pain? Okay, so yes, I do believe that energy work can help us relieve physical pain, but I will begin by saying that anybody who has physical pain wants to make sure that they have that checked out by a physical doctor, and that you're also following the things that the physical doctor has prescribed or has suggested. After that, I do very much believe that energetic work is a great complement to any physical medicine that we're receiving. Because the thing is that we have a multitude of different bodies. Our physical body is not the only body we have. We also have an energetic body. Now, one way to kind of think about the energetic body is if you have a sponge that you soak in water, the physical body is like the sponge, and the energetic body is the water that it's soaked inside of it. Now, when we die, it's like the sponge dries up, the water goes away, our prana leaves our body, our energy leaves our body disintegrates here on earth, but the prana and our soul and everything else, all the other bodies, they go off into another place. And so what happens is our physical body and our energetic body are so interconnected that when we work with one, we naturally are working with the other. So, what that means is that you can very much complement anything physical you're suffering from by also working energetically. But again, I'm stressing the word also because I think it's important for us to take both pathways, heal your physical body and to try to work with your energetic body. Now, I asked Terry a little bit more about where the pain was, and it's in the hips, and so the hips is a very common one. I hear this from a lot of people. A lot of us carry tension in our hips, and then there are also people who have pretty debilitating disorders that also cause problems in the hips. The hips are connected to the sacral chakra, which is connected to the element of water. So anything that we do that is like bringing in the water element is going to help us with anything going on in the sacral chakra, and therefore it's going to help us with our hips or any of that energy that we're carrying. Now, I also want to offer like a couple of suggestions, though, things that a person could do, especially to like remedy some hip pain from an energetic perspective. So, like I mentioned, working with the sacral chakra, kind of get to know that if you don't know much about chakras at all. I dive into that. We have an episode at Body Mind Witchcraft's YouTube channel specifically on the sacral chakra. It will give you some more ideas, but just briefly, I'll tell you a few. I said working with the element of water, working with movement. So sometimes, like when you're in a lot of pain, movement's not very easy. So you got to be able to find some movements that you can do. But circular movements are very good. I showed this one in our Shadow Seekers membership on Sunday during our workshop. But it's called the Sufi grind, and you're not going to be able to see me like they could because I had the camera set up differently for them. But you basically are just going to use, from a seated position, you just kind of make circles like this. And they can be really small circles if you're in some pain. But what we're just trying to do is get some movement into this area. So anything where we're moving the center of the body, the lower part of the body, this can be very helpful for working with your hips. Now, another thing, energy work that a person can do is kind of bringing in the color orange that connects to the sacral chakra. So thinking about eating orange foods can be a way to kind of work and balance and heal the sacral chakra. Other things that a person can do are shadow work. Shadow work, we sometimes don't think of that as like energy work. It's not exactly energy work, but when we do shadow work, we're releasing blockages in the mental and the emotional body, which will also help to free up some space in our physical and our energetic bodies as well. But I definitely believe that, when accompanied with medical treatment, I think energetic treatment will help us accelerate our healing in many, many ways, will help us release some of those blockages in the body. But in Terry's case, I would definitely recommend looking into working with the sacral chakra in particular because of the location of the pain in the hips. All right, I hope that that helps. And then I have a third question here. This one's from Billy. And this one's also tied to some energy work. So Billy said, how do you send healing energy to a relative that knows your spiritual path is different, and they think you worship the negative, evil Christian idol. And so I think by that, Billy probably means the devil. So how do you send energy to somebody who thinks you're a devil worshiper is the question, right? And I laugh only because I've experienced that too. So, and I think a lot of people on the pagan path have experienced people believing that what they're doing is evil. Okay, so here's some thoughts for Billy. Um, when it comes to energy healing, ideally we would like the permission of the person. I mean, it's just kind of the way I like to give them a heads up, like, can I send you energy? I've had people like, well, I got sick recently, and people asked if they could send me energy. So, they're coming to me, they're asking permission, and I said, yeah, I could use some energy right now because I'm so sick. Um, but when it comes to Reiki, if you kind of research this, you absolutely can send energy to someone who doesn't want it. Because in a lot of ways, like, what are you doing? You're sending healing energy, you're sending good, positive energy that you're putting out into a world that desperately needs it in any way it can get it. And at the end of the day, the person does have the choice whether to receive it or not receive it, even if they don't know that they're doing this consciously. So, one thing I suggest doing is, it's up to you if you want to do this, but just a thought is to see if you can connect to your own higher self and see if your higher self can connect to the higher self of that person. Because the higher self of that person, so if the person like is under the delusion that you're evil, that what you're doing, what you practice is evil, their higher self is not under that delusion because the higher self knows all of the higher truth, which is that witches and magical practitioners are not evil. So if you can connect to their higher self, you're going to have a dialogue that's very different than when you talk to them physically. So that's one thing you can do. But but honestly, many Reiki practitioners will tell you that you do not need people's permission to send energy, and at the end of the day, they're going to block it. They'll block it energetically if they don't want it anyway. So it's not like you're doing anything against their will or anything like that. So as far as how to send it, like I said, you can sort of connect to your higher self, and you can ask your higher self, like, what's the best way to send energy to this person? Otherwise, I would just send it the same way you would send energy to anybody. You can light a candle if that's in your practice. When I send energy to people, I will usually just close my eyes. And for me, when I send energy, I send it from my third eye. Different people will send it from the heart or from the solar plexus, maybe the part of your body you think is your center. But just send the energy out that way. And then one of the things I've also learned to do when I send energy is after I send it, I kind of cut the cords to that energy because as somebody who sends a lot of energy to people and is an energy worker, uh, we don't necessarily want to be connected to every single person, right? Because that's going to drain our energy. So once the act of sending the energy is done, I kind of imagine taking like a selenite athame and I just cut those cords, like not in a negative way. It's just like I sent you your energy and I've done that job. And now I'm going to kind of release myself from that. And I found that that's really helped me because as an empath, otherwise I'm staying connected to all these people and I'm still like, I'm like their energy's feeding back to me. And as an empath, it can be hard sometimes to know what's my energy and what's their energy. And I don't need to be overburdened by everybody else's. I got enough of my own problems, right? So that would be my advice. But sending energy to someone who doesn't necessarily want it, it's an act of kindness and goodwill, and I see no reason why you can't do it. All right, I hope that helps. So let me see if there's anything in the chat that I want to answer, and then I'm going to tell you what's coming up because we've got a lot of exciting things coming up. Okay, so this kind of jumps around, so I'm going to do my best to see what questions are here. Okay, so Melinda said, what would be your advice for the Mars-Chiron conjunction that's going on right now? I'm really feeling overwhelming anger and sadness over some past trauma. Okay, so sometimes conjunctions that happen will cause emotions to come up for us. And so my best advice would be to do something that's going to release some anger Honestly, the ritual that we're going to do tomorrow night, the free shadow work ritual, is going to help let go of some anger also, and some some fears that we have, and different like negative emotions that we're carrying. So that ritual would be very good for you. We're going to be doing the lion's breath during that ritual. That's one part of what we're going to be doing. And the lion's breath is hands down, to me, it's one of the best ways to just get rid of anger. And so the lion's breath, for those who don't know, you take an inhale, and on the exhale you stick out your tongue and you make a hissing noise, and just imagine purging all of that energy out of you. Um, that energy is kind of percolating in you, perhaps because of what's transiting, perhaps other things that are going on in your life. But what you want to do is you want to try to get rid of some of it. The other thing I would mention is trying to do something physical. Mars is a very physical planet. It's a very physical planetary energy. When I feel like I have too much Martian energy, which I have a lot of anyway as an Aries, and a lot of fire in me, I go and I do a physical activity that helps me get out aggression. For me, I climb mountains and I just take it out that way. But you can kickbox, you can punch a pillow, you can scream into a pillow. Do something that is going to be a positive outlet for your energy. Write about it, right? And shred up the paper. You know, it's something that's just going to allow you to get that out. But I think that, you know, these conjunctions, they're not permanent. It's not here forever. It's here. It's bringing up some things for you. Anything that's rising to the surface is something that you're able to work on right now. So if it's coming up, it means that you have it in you to let go of it, to work through it and let go of it. But definitely check out the ritual tomorrow night, because I think that will also help. Colleen said, what are some books on tarot that you would recommend? Great question, and my tarot books are in the other room. But let me see off the top of my head. One of my favorite books on tarot, it's called Tarot for the Self. And it's like a guided workbook that goes through all 78 cards and helps you make your own connections to those cards. Hands down, it's one of the best books out there. I will tell you though, let me think about it, if I can think of any others off the top of my head. I can't right now. That's my favorite one, but what I'm going to do after I got off this live, I will put a few more in the chat that I highly recommend as well, okay? Is there anything in particular about tarot you want to know? Because I have a library of like all of the different topics. So if there's anything in particular you want to know, let me know. Otherwise, if it's just general tarot, I'll give those suggestions. But good question. All right, let's see, make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, Sonia said, I was wondering about the upcoming ritual tomorrow, working with Hecate. Why would we want to let go and slay our demons when we are trying to accept them in our shadow? I may be thinking about this too literally, but I would love to understand the aspect better. Okay, so good. It's a good question, because this can be a bit confusing. Yeah. So there's kind of two schools of thought on this. It's like some of your demons are not your own. Okay, so that could be one thought on like why we would want to let go of some stuff. So if you're carrying, like for me, I feel like I'm carrying some of the fears of my, at least going back as far as my grandma, but probably further. My mom has them too. I've got them, and I don't believe that they're mine. So if there are things that you feel you're carrying that are not your own, being able to slay some of that, it can free you from that. Another thing is that it is true that we're trying to accept our darker aspects. What we're really trying to slay, though, is the feeling that they are dark, or they're bad, or there's something wrong with us because of them. So as they start to come up, hopefully that's enough to be able to hopefully it's enough to just be able to accept them. But what most people find is that's not enough. They're also, what comes up is they still have kind of that connotation that this is bad. It makes me bad. It means there's something wrong with me. And so if we can slay that connection to that, that can be very helpful. What Kali also does is she helps us slay that idea that we are separate from everything else. She helps us kind of reduce the ego to nothing, because we understand through working with her that we are not separate from anyone. And all of the darkness and all of the things that we think are inside of us, that are inside of us, are also simply illusion. Like we are, at the end of the day, we are we're just consciousness of the universe, right? We're this made of the same thing as the gods are. And so she helps us slay that idea that we're not, that we're somehow different, or we're disconnected, or various things like that. But it's a fine balance. Like when we're doing our shadow work, it's kind of a fine balance of releasing what doesn't really belong to us, releasing any of the negative energy that gets carried with the stuff that we carry, and then at the same time accepting and acknowledging those as parts of ourselves. So I hope that helps, and I will explain more of that in the ritual when we work with her tomorrow. Okay, and then Kurt said, "Do you ever use the Theban alphabet?" No, I haven't ever used it before, but it's a great question. If anybody who's watching this has worked with it, put that in the chat. And Kurt wants to know if anybody has any uses, any ways that they use it. But I've never used it before. Um, I work in my own practice. I've been learning Sanskrit, and so I work with Sanskrit a lot, but not the Theban alphabet. Okay, so if anybody has any more questions, put them in the chat. I'm going to tell you briefly the last minute or so here. I'm going to tell you what's coming up. So from the questions, you may have ascertained that we have a ritual coming up. So tomorrow we have a very special free shadow work ritual. Normally, these shadow work rituals are they are only open to our Shadow Seekers members. But because I would like to share this one with you, this is a very transformative ritual. We did this ritual last year around the same time. And I got so much feedback from people who said they let go of so much from their energetic body, things they didn't know they were carrying. Many people said they felt better than they'd felt in a very long time after they did this ritual. So I can't tell you enough how powerful and transformative this ritual is tomorrow. So if you would like to join us, you can do so. There will be a link below that has the Zoom link where you can grab that and you can join us live tomorrow. It's at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And this is live on Zoom on Thursday, May 23rd. And for anybody who can't watch it live, I'm going to be posting it in the Shadow Seekers group. It will also be on our Body Mind Witchcraft YouTube channel, and it will also be emailed to anybody who is on our mailing list. Okay, so if you're not on our mailing list, I will also put a link below. You can jump on our mailing list, and that way you'll receive all information about different events we do. But great ritual. We're going to be working with Kali. We are going to be breaking through some of our fears. We're going to be letting go of negative energy and emotions that we're holding in our body. And that's really what Kali is going to help us slay, is a lot of that negative energy and emotions that's in our body that can get in the way of our shadow work and actually discovering our shadow aspects. Okay, and then after that, our membership for Shadow Seekers is going to be open to the public once more. So we're going to be open from 5:25 to 5:31, and then we're going to be closed again for several more months as we work with all of our members. So if you would like to join us in Shadow Seekers, you can learn more about it after that ritual. And then there's also going to be some posts and emails going around that will tell you more about Shadow Seekers so you can decide if it's a right fit for you. Now is a great time to join us. As we've mentioned, Saturn is going to be going retrograde soon, and Chiron is also going to be going retrograde soon, which means it's a great time for your shadow work. We're going to be diving in, and we are going to be exploring some of our deep wounds in the next 3 months. We're also going to be looking at the father wound. We recently looked at the mother wound. And for anybody who doesn't know a lot about Shadow Seekers, you have access to all of the stuff we've done in the past year as well. And our workshops actually go back further than a year. So we'd love for you to join us. So that's coming up. And then on 5/29, next Wednesday, I'll be back with another episode. I think it's going to be on shadow work, kind of answering people's top questions about shadow work. And then our membership will be closing on 5/31. And then just a heads up, I want to give you about just a heads up on something exciting that's happening. I've been asked to speak during a summit on women's spirituality. And so I will be sharing more information about that. It's a free summit that anyone can attend, and there's going to be some great speakers, and I will also be featured on that. So that is going to be coming out sometime in mid to late June, and so just watch for more information so that you can join that too, and you can hear me, you can come support me, and then you can also listen to some of these other great speakers. Okay, I see here Heidi had said, is there something that will tell me how to become a shadow seeker? If you mean how to join our membership, yes, all that information's about to come out. As far as like seeking your own shadow, I would just recommend coming to the ritual tomorrow. We're going to talk about shadow work at the ritual. You can check out some of our episodes on Body Mind Witchcraft's YouTube channel. We have a lot of episodes on shadows, on shadow work as well. But if you're looking at on how to become a member of Shadow Seekers, we will be putting out all of that information in the next couple of days because we're open. We're going to be opening up. All right, so I don't see any other questions here, and I'm already at 1 hour and 10 minutes, so I'm going to sign off. My voice lasted this long, and I don't think it's going much longer. So I want to save it for tomorrow night's ritual. So if you love what you hear, please leave a thumbs up or a heart somewhere in the video. It just helps us get it out to the feed of more people. And if I missed anybody's questions, I will go back through the feed. I'll make sure I answer anything I missed. And of course, if you are watching this back on YouTube later, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any future episodes. Our channel is Body Mind Witchcraft. If you're not already subscribed to that, make sure you do that. And until next time, blessed be.